Now that John Wick has ascended to Valhalla and Keanu Reeves' soul has transferred into Black Sonic, it's about time that the action genre has gotten a bit of a revamp, with some new faces. Brown faces. Monkey Man is the most balls to the wall, over the top action movie political thing that I think I've ever seen. I watched this movie with my estranged Indian uncle that's a convicted felon, allegedly, and even he started making some weird grossed out squish faces at some of the more sensual scenes. The movie starts with our main character dressed in the gorilla suit from SpongeBob, getting his shit rocked. We find out that he's part of an illegal underground fighting ring, where his boss only pays him half because he doesn't get his ass beat hard enough. We then get to see this commercial of this weird naked baby man that becomes really important later on in the movie. After paying a young child to e-stalk a local celebrity, he employs an entire village to steal her handbag so that he has a reason to go into the cool kids club. After asking for a job to help him with his condition of being poor, she tells him that he's actually too poor to do anything. After showing off his severe eczema though, she gives him a chance at scrubbing toilets, because with hands like that, there's no way he's getting anywhere near food. We start getting flashbacks about something involving this mustached man and fire, before we cut back to the kitchen and get introduced to drugged up Indian Danny DeVito. After his first day on the job, Eczema Man is so fed up with cleaning up baby vomit that he goes to buy a gun from the local roti dealer. Back in the kitchen now, we meet our e-girl. She doesn't have an OnlyFans, but she's actually pimping out every single one of the girls in the photo albums. They're running a human trafficking drug den. And Indian Danny DeVito's job is to simultaneously be the biggest degenerate and smallest, most inefficient drug mule imaginable. Mr. Monkey Eczema reveals his secret identity and tells him about the illegal fights at the Underground Railroad so that he can drop Boss Lady's entire check and get on his good side. After proving that he actually does get his ass beat in securing the bag, he earns a promotion serving coke to dudes in suits that don't fit properly. After work, they go for a ride in a turbocharged tuk-tuk and trauma dump to each other before returning to the 9-to-5 grind. But an incident at work causes our main character to start having PTSD flashbacks. And while he's outside taking a breather, he meets this nice puppy that he feeds garbage to. And we jump into a montage of him going through his weekly routine of scrubbing dirt, getting his ass beat, feeding furry baby, and practicing his aim against the unfortunately mustached. Until finally the day of reckoning arrives and the fur baby brings him his Glocky while he's still at work. This is where the movie takes a serious turn and becomes something way realer, even though they're joking about how Danny DeVito's pee-pee doesn't work. We find out that the reason that any of this is even happening is because Eczema Man is trying to take revenge on this guy that has something to do with a traumatic incident from his past. And phase 1 of his plan is making him snort bleach until his head explodes. After realizing that he's not high and he's just dying, our villain Rana goes to take a potty break, but he's interrupted by this guy coming out of a stall and also by our main character pointing a gun at his face. But we're only 30 minutes into the movie, so we can't pull the trigger just yet. The fight in the bathroom shows us that our main character doesn't just get his ass beat for the crowd, and now that his plans fail, he tries his best to get away. I think this is genuinely one of the best chase sequences I've ever seen. I don't think I can tell you or do the movie the justice it deserves. Like, how do I explain that a rickshaw getaway scene was better than any Fast and Furious moment I've ever witnessed? Later in this video, I'm going to go into how this movie is way deeper than anything you see on the surface, but I think that it's worth watching for the action alone. They don't end up getting away in the 3-wheeled toddler car, and we end up in the back of a police van where we don't stay for very long because our main character kills everyone and decides to go for a jog through the slums. The movie doesn't give you a break with action scene after action scene, and it all stays really interesting with all the set changes, movement, and creativity in terms of how they decide to murk people. It took John Wick 3 movies to start biting people's noses off. This took 30 minutes, but all that gets put to a stop when they quickscope our main guy and he falls into a river full of dysentery. After some more flashbacks about his mother, we wake up inside of a temple where the leader of the group explains that they took him in after they found him almost dead inside the river. Apparently now he's the most wanted man in the city after his minor acts of terrorism, so he's gonna be staying with them for a while. Rana, our main bad guy, seems to have some sort of connection with that weird baby man that we saw earlier on TV, and he tells him that as insignificant as he may seem, Mr. Eczema has the potential to burn down everything that they've worked for if they don't completely snuff him out. Meanwhile, back at the temple, the guru is preparing hard drugs that he found in the dirt, so that our main character can trip balls and not be such a scaredy cat anymore. And also so we can see what all those flashbacks were about. We end up back in a small village right when they're putting on a play. The naked baby man actually seems to be in charge of this entire operation, to get these people out of their homes by any means necessary. And Rana is just the guy in charge of doing the dirty work. While everything is burning down outside, the main character's mom tells him to go hide upstairs so that nobody can find him. And it doesn't take too long until they're inside his house too. Rana confronts his mom, almost beating her to death while he watches from above. I think it's implied that something even worse happens here, but they don't show it, and we're kinda just left to wonder. Before leaving the house, they set her on fire, and a young Eczema comes down to try and save her, but there's nothing that he can do. We find out that the scars are from a desperate moment in his childhood, and they're not a skin condition. His guru tells him that it's time to fight for something other than just feeling pain, and that he has a purpose far greater, than just getting his ass beat. We then cut to weird baby man doing yoga in his diaper. He's been running an organized crime cult, all the while telling the media that the people he's stealing land from don't exist, and he's become such an influential figure that no one can question him. Kid, now grown up, starts his training arc after recovering from his geek session. They do something really cool here by blending the music with the fighting and having the drummer set the rhythm for all of his combinations. And it's just an example of one of those creative things that this movie does so well. Our main guy continues to get naked and sweaty for this group of hippies for an undetermined amount of time. And we start to see that this story might not have been as small scale as it seemed at first. In the background of everything that we've seen, there's a major political struggle going on with groups of people that outwardly use violence against the population. And Naked Baby Man is actually such a cult figure that he's influencing who's going to win the election. There's a way stronger link between this culty baby fever and the politics inside the world, and how it's actually affecting the people that live at the bottom. It actually relates to what's going on over there, and it's a big reason that this movie's actually banned in India. One of the temple dwellers ends up getting beaten by some people that are trying to evict the group. They're essentially squatting, have nowhere to go, and they need somebody to stand up for them. So in the middle of the night, Burna Boy goes to the statue of God to pray for better days, and to steal all of their money. We find out that Indian Danny DeVito's been getting soggy in the slums after being an accomplice to terrorism. And on his nightly stroll, he sees a poster that says Monkey Man has returned. The small twink child from earlier that was e-stalking the celebrity puts his entire V-Bucks allowance on one bet for the monkey. And after one of the most over-the-top, saliva-ridden pro wrestling intros ever, Eczema Man folds him with a single toe. But that was only round one, and all the toe strike does against his next opponent is tickle his pickle. Once he realizes that all he has to do is tickle it a little harder though, he wins the fight. The stolen breach makes its way back to the temple dwellers, and after repaying his debt, it's finally time for the monkey to finish what he started. Baba Ganoush pulls up to the facility to celebrate winning the election with all the other cokeheads. But Mr. Eczema and the gang are already on site, and they start fucking shit up immediately. He cooks a guy's ear and makes tea out of his hand before moving on to dessert, which is just a bomb that he puts on the stove. He decides not to take the stairs and instead gets intimate with two guys in an elevator. Not joking though, stabbing a guy in the neck while holding the knife with your teeth is some of the most deranged shit I think I've ever seen. And I can't tell if this director is just demented as fuck, or if everybody else making movies is just a wimp. After a full minute of squad wiping goons, even more minimum wage employees show up, and everything looks like it's over for our hero. But gang arrives right on time, and they start beating ass like it's Avengers Endgame. Except the costumes are even more insane. Symbolically, this scene is even cooler than it looks, but that's for part 2. Right now, we head upstairs to finish the mission. Ron is a cunt, so he sucker punches the shit out of Kid before he squares up for an actual fight. But when he starts punching the air, he realizes real quick that Dirty was the only way he was gonna win. Eczema Man doesn't get to completely troll him, but Buddy is not winning this fight. For kicking him in the ass 8 times, Ron's butt gives out. And Monkey Lord finally gets to take his revenge after all these years. There's no sappy, I forgive you for ruining my entire life, we can be friends now moment, and he takes his time beating him slowly while he remembers exactly what was done to his mother. After all that, it seems like the job should be done, but there's still one missing piece. The guy behind all of it. The Naked Baby Man. We find him soaking his toes upstairs, and he tries sweet-talking Eczema Lord into not fighting him. As a token of friendship, he presents his dirty sandals. And because the resale value on ancient Hindu drip is so high, our hero gets distracted long enough to get stabbed in the tummy. Now that he's locked in though, he catches the other toe fungus spike in a less than ideal way. Baby Man over-applied himself to yoga and didn't do any weight training, so even with his intestines falling out, our main guy is able to flip him over and stab him in the head, putting an end to all the violence and political manipulation that was going on behind him, at least for now. While looking at the painting on the wall, our main character has one final flashback, before he blacks out, along with the final frame of the movie. As far as summaries go, that was the most interesting I could make it. But it doesn't at all represent how good the movie actually is, and I still recommend you watch it. Now's the part of the video where you click off because you realize that I'm a hippie. It's important to note the way that the story starts, with our unnamed main character's story effectively being presented as the continuation of the monkey god's tale. When he asks his mother what happens next, we jump straight into the events of the movie, signifying that this is the continuation of that story. This is the next chapter that has yet to be written. The director is telling us that from the very beginning. Why choose that name? Why make that your identity? Was there a reason that that story resonated with him from the start? Was he always subconsciously aware of who and what he was? From the beginning, Baba Shakti is presented as a god, essentially. A man who knows the secrets of eternal life and immortality. A man who is worshipped and praised by devout followers. In every sense of the word, he is a god among men. And in keeping the movie grounded, this is the closest representation we can have to the gods of this world and what they might look like. It's not necessarily implied as a man who has profound wealth and influence alone, as that in and of itself aren't godly qualities. This man quite literally is worshipped as a deity, and we're able to see from the very beginning that the people that we're fighting in this movie, the people that we're going against, are the gods, the absolute rulers of the new world.
Who are we to question the gods?
It's almost as if he uses pain as a distraction. He sees his mother in the crowd when he's fighting Khan, when he takes Alfonso to go see the fights. And it's almost like being put into these kinds of situations. When he's at the forefront of conflict, it's almost as if his mind is trying to remind him of what he should be fighting for, and what his reason to struggle should be. But he actively rejects any sort of reminder instead of confronting it. He stops in the middle of the fight and encourages his opponent to hit him harder and harder, over and over again, so that he can no longer see the goal that's right in front of him. He's been running away from his past, or if he is chasing something, he's doing it with his eyes closed. And you can even see from his mother's reaction the disappointment over the fact that he's gone wayward, over the fact that this is not the path. Throughout the film, it's almost as if he starts to slowly reclaim his identity. When he's driving through the city witnessing all the poverty, he finally lets slip a little more truth about how his hands got like that. And when confronted with a question about what he plans to do about it all, Alfonso addresses him not by his name, but by his moniker, Monkey Man.
So what are you gonna do about this, Monkey Man?
In this film with our nameless main character, we're witnessing an identity crisis, in which little by little, our protagonist regains consciousness of who he actually is, even if the name they call him now is a little bit different. And the question becomes, is he just some guy? Is everything we've seen on screen just a matter of circumstance? Or is there actually something special about him? Is this something only he could have done? Because he is. I think we'd have to draw the line at saying that he's completely unkillable, considering the end of the movie. But he's demonstrated time and time again a miraculous ability to survive, to the point where it really wouldn't make sense if there wasn't some deeper reason behind it. Getting beaten unconscious professionally for who knows how long, narrowly surviving the car wreck only to get his head beaten in by police moments later, and still being able to muster the strength to fight again. Getting shot and falling into the river where he should have drowned, without a doubt. At what point do we get away from it being unrealistic and admit that it means something more? Religious iconography is clear as day, and it's obvious that the movie is saying that our main character is a prophet, or rather, an avatar that exists in our world for a divine purpose. In the Ramayana, the story that the movie is based on, the monkey god is struck down by lightning as punishment for severely overstepping his boundaries. And now that he's imbued with the powers of the gods, he has way more than he knows what to do with. He begins using his powers immaturely, going through his youth without real purpose, not at all applying his strength to things that matter. This runs in parallel with the way that our main character uses his strength for nothing else but spectacle fighting. He ends up losing his abilities, never again able to return to his full potential, until he's presented with the opportunity to rescue his mentor's wife, who's been kidnapped by the Demon King. This is the same as how our main character doesn't reach his full potential until he realizes he's on a quest to save these stupid girls, or at least tear down the syndicate that allows for things like this to occur. And what goes along with that is slaying the Demon King, or in this case, the Naked Baby Man. It isn't until he embarks on this valiant quest that he's able to muster up all of the strength that should belong to him. And only in the face of duty and fighting for the right thing can he truly become what he needs to be, and what he is. That's exactly what the guru means when he tells him to remember who he is. His purpose is greater than fighting to feel pain. It's to accomplish this task that's been his duty from the beginning. And we can see the symmetries in these two stories clear as day.
The gods must have a greater plan.
The symbolism runs deep even in the scenes of him training. Before receiving any instruction, all he does is throw every ounce of power into each one of his punches. But within the commune, he learns about the separation of being, the two halves that are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but come together to make one whole, whether it be the energetic and destructive properties of the gods, the balance of masculinity and femininity within an individual, or the setup and execution that should separate his punches. There's a recurring lesson here about what it means to be complete, and the nature of balance in all things. It seems like the entire story of Hanuman, or at least his origin, is a tale of what can occur with misdirected power. In the ancient story, his initial disfigurement comes as a result of his unguided power. It's a theme that we see run throughout the movie as well. The film encompasses the story in its entirety. It's a retelling through and through. in a completely new setting, one that makes way more sense to us. It's more than references that we're seeing here. It's a direct translation of the story that had so much power back then, but still remains relevant now. And anybody that has any sort of belief in these epics will see the truth that exists within them, and the vision that this director was trying to create. I think it grounds all of the fantastical religious elements that might seem a little ridiculous from a more modern perspective. It frames it in a way that doesn't make us immediately pass it off as fiction, and shows us that perhaps these stories aren't so outlandish after all. It's a story as old as time, or at least as a written history, and I can't help but believe that there's more than a little truth in it. I think that this is modernization done in the best way possible, and if there was any doubt whether or not all of this is just a stretch, the movie itself presents the tale of the captives exploited by the tyrannical, a story which repeats itself in each and every generation. What we're seeing is just the most recent rendition of that. In every time and place, there will be a person that fills the void left. Evil is a natural part of the world, and whatever change is created will not last. It will fade out. Just as the smallest ember can burn everything, eventually too, that flame will burn its last breath. Darkness will crawl back into place and overshadow everything, and you can either leave the world to rest in darkness and complacency, or burn it all down, knowing that it's only a matter of time before another spark will be needed. Is restarting the cycle worth it? If darkness is the defaulting state of the world, and light is effort and struggle, should we leave things as they yearn to be, or fight knowing that the cycle never ends? He realizes that his purpose isn't to get revenge, it's to tear down this kingdom of depravity run by this man. And only after that is his mission actually completed. The story of a boy who's lived his entire life for this one purpose, who witnessed this horrific thing so early on, it became his definition, to the point where he could no longer see the true goal in front of him, and how much greater his story was, until he realized it was him all along, even in this life, scorched by the sun, deprived of his powers because of his mischief, and only regaining his strength after realizing the purpose of his fight. This is his story over and over again, in every era, in every age. It's a timeless reality that we see repeated throughout history. It's one of the truest, most foundational struggles, as scary as that may be. And although these empires of debauchery can reign for so long, spread so far and deeply, there will always be people on the other side fighting to undo. Is that God? If not, then what is? Righting the misdeeds of this world and its evil creatures, usurping the thrones of those who falsely believe themselves to be the kings and queens of the new world. What is essentially the height of power for a man to attain? The highest above all others a man could live. To be able to disrupt such an overwhelming force of influence, would that not take divine intervention, or perhaps God himself, for someone on the bottom to have it all collapse to the ground? In the wine scene, we see direct comparisons between Rana and Ravan, with our main character being entranced by the painting on the wall. And all of this is triggered by him witnessing what's happening to the girl in front of him, reinforcing the concept that this story runs in parallel with the mythology, and that the posh businessmen that fill these rooms with paintings of kings and queens on the wall are the demons of the new world. On TV, Baba Shakti, who is essentially the primary religious and political leader, declares that violence is never the answer, all the while being the one behind the operations that leave countless unnamed people killed, and while openly supporting politicians that run on exclusionist platforms. Rana Singh isn't just some random guy that's doing the dirty work. He's the chief of police. These are people that are supposed to be the shining figures of society, and yet they're involved in the lowliest criminal activities. The people at the top are pulling the strings of the underworld. That's how deep the corruption runs, and it's a testament to the realities of power and the true nature of some of these people at the top, whether it be in India or further abroad. With recent events, the tenets of Hinduism have been disfigured and warped into something disgusting, distasteful, and divisive, with the same kind of evil people we see portrayed here, acting the exact same, but in our real world. The faith has been adulterated to the point where its meaning has been lost, and it's being utilized for despair rather than the betterment of people. This is one of the most relevant, contentious films that addresses the crisis actively going on. It not only exposes the depravity of the elite, who use religion as a shield for their horrific acts, as well as a weapon to carry out precisely those things. But it also reminds us of the true virtuousness that these tales and beliefs were supposed to hold, at a time when it can be easy to forget. We go from this quiet, secluded temple, standing under the silent gaze of Shiva and Parvati, to an arena full of clamoring people looking down at what they believe to be a god. It represents the dichotomy of what the faith is and what it's become in our modern day. How far away things have drifted from their intended state. The statements of hypocrisy used to justify your belief system. They have destroyed our sacred values. They've stolen our homes, poisoned our children's minds. They have polluted us with their symbols, false idols. We have been blinded. This is precisely what you've done to your own people, your own faith, in the name of power and supremacy, against all that was meant to be. The most profound and deep-rooted corruption, yet millions are blind to it. The meaning of the fight taking place in this room, covered in paintings of past kings, spattering each and every one of them with blood, not only dethroning these false gods of the New World, but condemning these past regimes as well, usurping them long after it was due, with the final moments taking place right in front of a scene depicting the mythological counterpart of the story, and with all of it resolving on the night of Diwali, the celebration of light overcoming dark, in a nation fundamentally corrupted by this tainted expression of what was meant to be one of the most impartial, morally sound belief systems. It'll take more than a single film to redeem the abject atrocities brought about by these bad people, and wake people back up to the doctrines that they falsely interpreted and morphed into something vile. And although change happens little by little, revolutions are never too far out of reach. All it takes is one small flame to burn all of these terrible structures down. And who's to say lightning won't strike and do just that? It has before, and we've seen it here, and it will again. Perhaps that's the story of our universe, over and over again.
Please subscribe so that I can eat. And so that you don't miss my new videos. New videos coming real soon. Press that button so you don't miss anything. Bye bye.